The massive white hull of the USNS Mercy gleamed against the backdrop of distant stars. Red crosses marked its sides, a symbol recognized across human space and beyond. Inside the ship's main medical bay, Dr. Laura Bennett watched her patient's vital signs stabilize on the holographic display. The young colonist would live, thanks to the advanced medical technology that made the Mercy the finest hospital ship ever built by human hands. "Doctor, we have 3 more incoming patients from the mining colony on Haven," Nurse Eric White said, his voice calm despite the urgency of the situation. 2 humans and 1 Valaxian with plasma burns. Dr. Bennett nodded, her short brown hair swaying with emotion. "Prep Bay 3 and call Dr. Martinez for backup. The Valaxian will need special care. Their skin reacts differently to burn treatment." The medical bay hummed with activity as staff moved with practiced efficiency. Through the large observation window, Laura could see the small blue-green world of Haven spinning below. The colony there was one of many that depended on the Mercy's regular visits for advanced medical care. On the bridge, Captain Daniel Carter studied the latest security reports with a frown. The Crix Empire's ships had been spotted more frequently in this sector, their sleek black vessels like sharks circling in deep water. His orders were clear: maintain course and continue the medical mission. The Mercy was a hospital ship, not a warship, protected by ancient conventions of neutrality. "Captain," called Lieutenant Mary Collins from her engineering station, "I finished the updates to our shield harmonics. It's not much, but it should give us better protection against energy weapons, just in case." Carter smiled at her initiative. "Let's hope we never need to test that, Lieutenant. Our best defense is still the Red Cross on our hull and centuries of medical neutrality." The ship's communications officer, Kevin Phillips, turned from his console with concern on his face. "Sir, we're picking up a distress call from the outer colony on Haven's second moon. They're reporting multiple casualties from a mining accident." "Plot a course," Carter ordered. "Dr. Bennett, did you copy that?" Already preparing the trauma teams, Laura's voice came through the intercom. "We'll be ready when we arrive." The Mercy changed course smoothly, its massive engines pushing it toward the moon colony. In the medical bay, Laura organized her staff while checking supplies. The ship carried enough medical equipment and supplies to treat thousands of patients, with facilities that would impress even the finest hospitals on Earth. Eric rushed past with a cart of specialized trauma kits. "Doctor, the initial reports say we might have crush injuries. I've prepped the bone knitters." "Good thinking," Laura said. She watched as more of her staff prepared for the incoming casualties. Despite the advanced automation available, she believed in a human-centered approach to medicine. Robots and AI could assist, but the human touch remained vital to healing. Through another window, she could see the gas giant Haven Prime rising behind its moon, its swirling purple clouds creating an ethereal backdrop for their mission. 5 years ago, when she'd accepted the position as Chief Medical Officer, Laura had wondered if she was ready for the responsibility. Now she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. The ship's AI announced their approach to the moon colony. Laura took a deep breath, centering herself for what was to come. This was why the Mercy existed: to bring hope and healing to the farthest reaches of human space. Even as tensions rose with the Crix Empire, even as warships gathered in distant sectors, the hospital ship continued its vital mission. 2 minutes to arrival, Captain Carter's voice announced shipwide. "All medical teams to your stations." Laura looked at her assembled staff. Humans dedicated to healing, working with technology that would have seemed magical a century ago. Outside, the stars streaked past as the Mercy approached its destination, its white hull a beacon of hope against the darkness of space. None of them knew that in a few short hours, this routine mission would transform into one of the most significant events in human history. For now, they focused on their immediate task: helping those in need, regardless of species or politics. It was what they did best, and what would soon be tested in ways they could never have imagined. The emergency alert blared through the Mercy's corridors just as Dr. Laura Bennett finished treating the last mining accident victim. The harsh sound made everyone in the medical bay freeze for a moment before returning to their duties with increased urgency. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. Captain Carter's voice came through the ship-wide communication system. His usual calm tone carried an edge Laura had never heard before. "Dr. Martinez, take over here," she said, already moving toward the door. The younger doctor nodded, his hand steady as he continued treating the injured colonist. When Laura reached the bridge, she found Captain Carter standing at the main view screen. Commander Susan Wright's hologram floated in the center of the room, her Earth Defense Fleet uniform bearing the marks of recent combat. "They hit 3 colonies without warning," Commander Wright was saying. "The Krix Empire has officially declared all human expansion into this sector as hostile action. They're considering our medical aid to their former subject species as an act of war." Laura watched the tactical display with growing horror as red dots appeared, marking attacked colonies. The Krix ships were moving in a clear pattern, straight toward the Mercy's position. "We have wounded here," Captain Carter said, his hands gripping the command rail. "Evacuation would take hours we don't have." "The nearest defense fleet ships are engaged near Alpha Centauri," Commander Wright replied. "We can't reach you in time. You need to run." Kevin Phillips spoke up from his communication station. "Sir, I'm picking up Krix battle communications. At least 3 warships, approaching at high speed." Lieutenant Collins looked up from her engineering console. "The shield modifications are holding stable, but we were never meant to stand up to military weapons." Captain Carter turned to Laura. "Doctor, this is your medical mission. What are your thoughts?" Laura looked at the patient status displays. They had over 200 patients aboard, including the recently rescued miners and several members of species the Krix considered rebellious. She thought of the oaths she'd taken, the principles that guided human medicine for centuries. "We can't abandon them," she said firmly. "Some won't survive a rapid evacuation, and the colony here isn't equipped to handle critical care patients." The captain nodded, as if he'd expected this answer. "Commander Wright, we're staying. Send help if you can, but we'll hold our position." "You'll be significantly outnumbered," Wright warned. "The Krix don't respect medical neutrality like other species." "Then they'll learn about it today," Carter replied. The hologram flickered out, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Laura returned to the medical bay, gathering her staff. "The situation has changed," she announced. "We have hostile forces approaching, but we're continuing our mission. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the colony should do so now." She looked at their faces, humans who had dedicated their lives to healing others. Not a single person moved toward the exit. Eric checked their supply levels. "We have enough medication and equipment for 3 weeks at current usage rates, more if we implement emergency rationing. Begin converting the secondary cargo bay into an auxiliary ward," Laura ordered. "We may have more patients soon." Throughout the ship, crew members prepared for what was coming. Lieutenant Collins worked with her engineering team to reinforce crucial systems. Kevin Phillips monitored the approaching Krix fleet while trying to contact any nearby friendly ships. In the trauma ward, Laura checked on the sleeping Valaxian patient they'd treated earlier. His purple skin had already begun healing where they'd applied the burn treatments. She thought about what Commander Wright had said about the Krix considering this an act of war. The ship's AI announced the first Krix warship would arrive in 20 minutes. Captain Carter's voice came through the intercom, steady and resolute. "All hands, this is your captain. We've all heard of hospital ships being caught in conflicts before, but today we're choosing to stand our ground. Whatever happens next, remember, we're healers first. That's what humanity stands for out here in the stars." Laura looked at her reflection in a darkened screen. She saw determination in her own eyes, matching what she saw in her staff. They had no weapons, no military training, but they had something else, an unshakable commitment to preserving life, no matter the species, no matter the cost. The Krix were about to learn what that really meant. The Krix warships emerged from faster-than-light travel like black arrows against the stars. 3 massive vessels, their hulls covered in weapon ports, surrounded the Mercy. The hospital ship's white hull seemed small and fragile in comparison. On the bridge, Kevin Phillips received the first transmission. "Captain, they're hailing us." "On screen," Carter ordered, straightening his uniform. The image that appeared showed a Krix war master. His gray, scaled skin and sharp teeth were typical of his species, but the cybernetic implants covering half his face marked him as a high-ranking commander. "I am War Master Krasthul of the Krix Empire," the alien said, his translator making his words sound harsh and metallic. "You will surrender your vessel and all traders under your protection." Captain Carter kept his voice steady. "This is Captain Daniel Carter of the USNS Mercy. We are a hospital ship, protected under Section 47 of the Galactic Medical Neutrality Act. We have wounded aboard who cannot be moved." The Krix commander's organic eye narrowed. "Your human laws mean nothing to the Empire. You harbor enemies of the Krix. This makes you an enemy." In the medical bay, Laura and her team worked quickly to move critical patients away from the outer walls. The Krix ship's targeting sensors swept over them repeatedly, making the medical equipment buzz with interference. "Dr. Bennett," Eric called out. "The new arrivals are awake." Laura rushed to the secure ward where 3 Krix soldiers lay in recovery. They had been found half dead in an escape pod 2 days ago, deserters from the Empire. Their bodies were still wrapped in regenerative bandages. "What's happening?" one of them asked, his translator crackling with fear. "Are those Imperial ships?" "Yes," Laura answered honestly. "But you're our patients. We won't hand you over." Lieutenant Collins' voice came through the ship's communication system. "Doctor, the shield modifications are affecting some of the medical equipment. I need to know which systems are essential." Laura quickly sent her a list of critical life support systems that couldn't be disrupted. Throughout the ship, crew members worked to protect their patients while preparing for the worst. On the bridge, the conversation with War Master Krasthul continued. "Your species is young," the Krix commander said. "You do not understand. Weakness must be purged. Those who flee battle deserve death." "Treating the wounded isn't weakness," Carter replied. "It's a sign of civilization. Every advanced species in known space recognizes medical neutrality." "You have 10 minutes to surrender," Krasthul stated. The transmission cut off. Kevin Phillips looked up from his station. "Sir, I'm detecting weapon systems powering up on all 3 ships." In engineering, Lieutenant Collins worked frantically to strengthen the shields around the medical bays. Her team rerouted power from non-essential systems, knowing they needed every bit of protection they could get. Dr. Martinez rushed into the main medical bay. "Laura, we have a situation. One of the Krix patients is having a severe reaction to the regenerative treatment." Laura hurried to help, pushing aside thoughts of the warships outside. The Krix patient's scales had turned a dangerous shade of gray, his breathing ragged. She checked his vital signs, already reaching for the emergency medications. "Hold on," she told the Krix soldier as she administered the treatment. "Just hold on." The ship's AI counted down the minutes as the Krix warships moved closer. Captain Carter ordered all non-medical crew to emergency stations. The Mercy's shields hummed as Lieutenant Collins pushed them to their limits. In the medical bay, Laura stabilized her Krix patient just as the 10-minute deadline approached. She looked at the alien soldier, seeing not an enemy but simply someone who needed help. The ship's speakers crackled. "Time is up," War Master Krasthul's voice announced. "Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in immediate destruction." Captain Carter's response echoed through every corridor of the Mercy. "We are a hospital ship. We will not surrender our patients. If you want to test whether the galaxy will stand by and watch you destroy medical personnel trying to save lives, then fire. But know that this moment will define the Krix Empire for generations to come." The entire ship held its breath, waiting to see if compassion would prove stronger than weapons. The Crick's weapons remained locked on the Mercy when Kevin Phillips suddenly sat up straight at his communications console. His fingers flew across the controls as new signals appeared. "Captain, multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel," he called out. They're forming a barrier between us and the Crick's vessels." The bridge crew watched in amazement as ships of different designs and sizes appeared around them. Some were small and sleek, others large and crystalline. All moved to defensive positions around the hospital ship. "Sir, we're being hailed by the Valaxian flagship," Kevin said, his voice filled with surprise. The main screen lit up to show Admiral Igzin of the Valaxian fleet. The Admiral's bioluminescent skin pulsed with calm blue patterns as she spoke. "Captain Carter, the Mercy saved my people from the Grand Plague last year. Today, we return the favor." More ships continued to arrive. A massive vessel of the Centaurian Alliance dropped out of light speed, its organic hull glowing softly. The ship's captain, a being of pure energy contained in an environmental suit, appeared on a secondary screen. "The Mercy treated our wounded after the asteroid mining disaster," the Centaurian captain said. "We stand with you." In the medical bay, Laura watched through the observation window as more allies arrived. She recognized designs from half a dozen species they had helped over the years. Eric stood beside her, checking patient monitors while keeping an eye on the growing fleet outside. "Doctor," he said softly, "the Crick's patients are watching too." Laura turned to see the 3 Crick's deserters staring out another window. Their expressions were hard to read, but their posture showed clear surprise at the gathering fleet. War Master Krasvol's image appeared on all screens throughout the ship. His cybernetic eye glowed with anger. "This is not your concern," he growled at the assembled allies. "The Empire will not be denied its prey. The Mercy is under our protection," Admiral Igzin replied. Her skin patterns shifted to warning reds. "They have earned the right to continue their mission of healing." Lieutenant Collins worked quickly at her engineering station, coordinating with the Allied ships to extend their shield coverage. The combined defensive screen would be far stronger than anything the Mercy could generate alone. Kevin's console lit up again. "Captain, more ships arriving. It's the Aldarian Medical Fleet and the Proxima Aid Corps. They're all coming." Vessels of every size and shape continued to appear. Some were hospital ships like the Mercy, others were supply vessels or research ships. All had come to stand with their human colleagues. The lead Aldarian ship, its white hull marking it as another hospital vessel, transmitted to all channels. "We remind the Crick's Empire that attacks on medical ships are forbidden by galactic law. The Mercy's mission is the same as ours, to heal all who need aid, regardless of species or faction." In the secure ward, Laura checked on her Crick's patients. The one who had suffered the reaction was recovering well. He looked at her with all 4 eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Why treat us when we were your enemies?" "Because you needed help," Laura answered simply. "That's all we need to know." On the bridge, Captain Carter stood calmly as he addressed War Master Krastvul. "You see now what the Mercy represents. Not just human values, but universal ones. Every species here has been touched by war and suffering. They understand that healing must stand above conflict." The Crick's commander's organic eye narrowed as he studied the tactical display. His 3 warships now faced a fleet of over 30 vessels. More were still arriving. "This is your final warning," Admiral Igzin stated. "The Mercy continues its mission, or you face all of us." Throughout the hospital ship, crew members held their breath. In the medical bay, Laura and her team kept working, treating patients from a dozen species. Outside, the Allied fleet maintained its protective formation, a physical demonstration of the bonds the Mercy had built through its mission of healing. War Master Krasvul's next decision would either start a war or prove that even the mighty Crick's Empire could learn the value of mercy. War Master Krasvul made his choice. The Crick's warships opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space with deadly purple beams. The Allied fleet responded immediately, their combined shields flashing as they absorbed the attack. Earth Defense Fleet dropping out of light speed, Kevin Phillips announced from his station. Admiral Howard's flagship Guardian is leading them. The human warships appeared behind the Krix vessels, their arrival perfectly timed. Admiral Carol Howard's face appeared on the Mercy's main screen, her gray hair and determined expression showing years of combat experience. "Sorry we're late," she said. "Looks like you've made some friends while we were away." The medical bay shook as a stray shot hit their shields. Laura steadied herself against a wall, then turned to her staff. "Everyone stay calm and focus on your patients. The fleet will protect us." Dr. Martinez worked quickly to secure loose equipment. "Laura, we got incoming casualties from one of the Valaxian ships. Their medical bay took damage. Prep the emergency transporters," she ordered. "Eric, get trauma teams 2 and 3 ready." Outside, the battle raged. The Krix ships fought with their usual skill, but they were caught between the Earth Defense Fleet and the Allied vessels protecting the Mercy. Lieutenant Collins' shield modifications proved their worth as several direct hits were absorbed without damage. "Engineering to bridge," Collins called out. "The power grid is holding, but we need to reduce usage in non-critical areas." Captain Carter gave the order to shut down all non-essential systems. The Mercy's lights dimmed slightly as power was redirected to the shields and medical equipment. In the trauma center, Laura and her team received the first wave of Valaxian casualties. Their bioluminescent skin flickered weakly as the medical staff worked to stabilize them. The Krix patients washed from their beds, their expressions unreadable as they observed the humans treating their former enemies with the same care they had received. Admiral Howard reports 2 Krix ships have taken heavy damage, Kevin announced on the ship-wide channel. "They're falling back." War Master Krasful's voice boomed through all communications channels. "You dare to challenge the Empire? We will destroy you all." But even as he spoke, more ships arrived to join the defense of the Mercy. A Proximan medical frigate moved alongside, extending its own shields to reinforce the hospital ship's protection. The Aldarian vessels launched healing pods, small, automated medical units that could reach damaged ships and treat casualties in place. Laura felt the deck vibrate as another volley of weapons fire was absorbed by their shields. She kept working, her hand steady as she treated a badly burned Valaxian engineer. Around her, human doctors and nurses worked side by side with alien medical staff who had transported over to help. "Doctor," Eric called out, "the Krix patient in bed 7 wants to speak to his commander. He says it's important." Laura looked up from her patient, surprised. The Krix deserter had pulled himself to a sitting position, his military bearing visible despite his injuries. "Can we get him a secure channel to the Krix flagship?" On the bridge, Captain Carter considered the request. The battle still raged outside, but something was changing. The Krix attacks seemed less coordinated, as if their crews were hesitating. "Let him speak," Carter decided. "Kevin, set up the channel." The wounded Krix soldier's image appeared on the Krix flagship's bridge. He spoke in his native language, his words translated for all to hear. "War Master, I was wrong about humans. They took me in when I was dying. They healed me when they knew I was their enemy. This is not weakness. It is a strength we do not understand." More voices joined his. Other Krix ships began reporting crew members speaking up, questioning the attack on a hospital ship. The battle paused as War Master Krasful faced a choice that would change his empire forever. In the Mercy's medical bay, Laura continued her work. Through the windows, she could see the Earth Defense Fleet holding position alongside vessels from a dozen alien species, all of them united in defense of a simple idea, that healing transcended the boundaries of war. War Master Krasful's flagship turned slightly, its weapons powering down. Across the battlefield, other Krix ships began to lower their shields. The War Master's voice, when it came through the communication system, sounded different, less certain than before. How can healing be strength? He demanded. The Empire has always taught that the weak must fall. Before anyone could answer, alarms sounded in the Mercy's medical bay. Dr. Bennett, Eric called out urgently. The Crick's elder in bed 12 is crashing. Laura rushed to the bed where one of the oldest Crick's deserters lay fighting for his life. His scales had turned a dangerous pale gray, and his life signs were failing. The other Crick's patients watched in tense silence as she worked. "Get me the emergency regenerator," she ordered. "And call Dr. Martinez. We need his expertise on Crick's biology." Kevin Phillips kept the channel to the Crick's flagship open. Every movement in the medical bay was broadcast to the watching fleet. War Master Krasvul and his crew saw the human medical team fighting to save one of their own. Dr. Martinez arrived quickly, bringing specialized equipment. "His cellular structure is breaking down," he reported. "The original injuries were worse than we thought." Laura nodded, her mind racing through treatment options. "We'll try the new protein synthesis treatment. It's experimental, but it might work with Crick's physiology." The elder Crick's eyes opened slightly. "Let me go," he whispered through his translator. "I am not worth this effort." "Every life is worth saving," Laura replied firmly. She began the treatment, her movements precise and careful. "That's what we believe. That's what we fight for." On the bridge, Captain Carter watched the medical drama unfold on his screen. Around the Mercy, the Allied fleet held position, weapons ready but not firing. The Earth Defense Fleet ships moved closer to the Crick's vessels, but Admiral Howard held her fire, understanding that something important was happening. Back in the medical bay, Laura and her team worked frantically. The experimental treatment began to take effect, the elder's scales slowly returning to their normal color. His vital signs stabilized, then strengthened. "It's working," Dr. Martinez announced, checking the readings. "His cellular structure is regenerating." The elder Crick's looked up at Laura with all four eyes. "In all my years," he said slowly, "I have never seen such dedication to preserving life." War Master Krasvul's voice came through again, but this time it was directed at his own fleet. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered. I must think on what we have witnessed." Lieutenant Collins reported from engineering. "The Crick's ships are powering down their weapon systems. Their shields are at minimum power." Throughout the Mercy, crew members held their breath. The elder Crick's raised his voice, speaking directly to his War Master through the open channel. "I am Sage Elder Crick's Tal," he announced. "I followed because I saw our empire losing its way. Now I see a different kind of strength. These humans fight death itself, not their enemies." More Crick's ships began broadcasting support for the Elder's words. Their crews had watched the humans work to save one of their oldest and wisest, using technology and techniques freely to help someone they had been fighting moments before. Admiral Howard's voice came through. "War Master Krasvul, your ships are surrounded, but we would prefer to end this day with understanding rather than violence." The War Master was silent for a long moment. The entire fleet waited for his response. Finally, he spoke. "The Empire has always valued strength. Perhaps we have misunderstood what strength truly means." In the medical bay, Laura finished stabilizing her patient. She looked around at her team, humans and aliens working together, healing together. Through the windows, she could see the Crick's ships now floating peacefully among the Allied fleet. Victory had come not through superior firepower or clever tactics, but through the simple act of refusing to abandon their duty to heal. The Mercy had lived up to its name in ways no one could have predicted.